Well, time to waste more hours on this damn movie. Hey yo, I'm just your average bored bookworm with an above average love for Artemis Fowl. I have been a fan since elementary school, and wow, I'm so disappointed in these movies, which is why I've been making this little series of talking about how much they screwed over the characters in this adaptation. I've already put out one video on this topic going over the Fowl family, so go watch that if you want to listen to that. But if you'd rather just hear about the Butlers, because the Butlers went through quite some changes. So I stated before, this video is on the Butler family. They are an integral part of the Fowl dynamic. Like in the last video, I'm going to tell you very briefly a little bit about the production that went into this. I'm going to go even briefer than the last video because I'm assuming you watched the last one. But just know that it took like 19 years for this movie to come out. It went through multiple hands throughout the entire process. Yeah, not a good history in terms of production for this for this movie. But yeah, let's hop into things and talk not about a character first, but a dynamic. For those who have only watched the movie, this is going to come to a bit of surprise to you, but the Butlers and the Fowls have been in leagues together for generations. The two grouped up together when they originally arrived at Ireland. The Fowls come up with the schemes and the Butlers execute them. This is essentially the dynamic. The Fowls are the brains and the Butlers are the brawns. They have worked together so long that it's just this dynamic where when a new fowl is born, there will be a Butler waiting to be that fowl's bodyguard at the hospital when they're born. One of the Butler I'll be talking about the most is only called Butler, so it gets a little confusing, but he states that his first day on the job with Artemis was standing outside the maternity. Sorry about that. I happen to have a speech impediment if you haven't caught on. This is a very interesting dynamic that isn't actually shown at all in the movies. And this is something you need to know because there is a long history, there's a long lineage behind the Fowls and the Butlers. And without it, you don't understand a lot of what goes on between them. He's not just a bodyguard. He is so much more. And the families have been together for generations. They have a very, symbiotic relationship with each other. There's never a fowl without a Butler. And should the Butler fall while protecting a fowl, the Butler family gets a 6-figure sum. So it's pretty good job, if, you're asking me. Before I hop into actually talking about the characters, I just want to mention that while doing a little extra research for this part, I came to realize that the Artemis Fowl fandom wiki actually separates the films and the novel characters. They have separate pages. They are linked together, but even on the front page, you see that one says the movie and the other says the original novels. Even the wiki knows these are two completely different characters. Well, let's dive into the meat of things and talk about Butler. It's a little weird being, the Butler family and Butler. Yeah. I guess I should have mentioned this in the dynamic, but a Butler will not tell the fowl that they are protecting the real name until they die. I'm actually blanking out on the reason behind this. I probably should have reread the third book, which is what this is explained. But, oh well. It's not important, the reasoning, because the movie throws that out and just, says his name. The movie just throws that out and she's like, oh yeah, his name's Dom. And I'm like, thanks for spoiling it for everybody. There's actually a big plot point in 3 of the original novels. But yeah, sorry, I usually try to separate the movie and the book to 2 separate areas and then talk about them side by side. But I really need to get the name stuff out of the way because it's very confusing since they never actually refer to him as Butler. In the movies, they only refer to him as Dom. They say it's weird because they actually introduce him as the Butler, but don't call him the Butler, call him Domovoy or Dom. And I'm like, what was the point of that? Was that just to acknowledge the fact that he's called Butler in the in the books. I don't know. Okay, I'm getting off. I'm getting off tangent. I'm talking about the characters. Just this makes me very, very mad. Butler is Artemis Fowl II's bodyguard. He has been by Artemis' side, like I mentioned, since he was born. But before that, he has a very long history. You know, he, like all other Butlers, went through some intense training to become the bodyguard he is today. Butler is sent off to this person named Madame Co to be in her personal protection academy. And that's why he trained like many Butlers before him. After he graduates and eventually gets the blue diamond tattoo, which shows that he's like ready for services, he goes off and does some side jobs until there is a fowl born for him to protect. He's done everything from blow up a Colombian drug lord's estate to being part of a 5-year stint with an espionage unit in Russia in the late 80s. Yeah, he's done a lot. He's even worked for the FBI at one point, I think, if I'm reading this correctly. Yeah, he's a badass. There's no way around that. He's a badass. So yeah, at 22 is when he became a big brother. And he has this long history. Like pretty much all of this, I think. Yeah, during like all of this happens before he even becomes Artemis's bodyguard, and this is like so important to everything about his character. When Juliet is 4 years old, Butler starts training her in martial arts. Like this man, like is training a 4-year-old in martial arts. Oh, his own little sister. Oh, it's adorable. He also has a lot of other skill sets aside from being like a super awesome martial arts master who teaches 4-year-olds how to fight. He also has like Corbin Bleu cooking. Some of the martial arts that he has learned involve like protecting the principal rather than the self. So like he can protect Artemis better than he can protect himself when he uses that form. Very important for a bodyguard. He knows emergency medicine, like information technology, fluent in multiple languages. Like, yeah, he's pretty cool. He also has like a very good gut instinct. Like it's straight up listed as one of his abilities in the wiki that he has like a really good gut instinct. Like when your gut instinct is that good, like it's an ability. Damn, this guy is awesome. But aside from all that, he's actually a real softie. He has a very big heart for Artemis and his sister. There's only one part that I can really remember where Butler leaves Artemis' side, and it's to go check on his sister. And it's like the one thing that makes him crack from taking care of Artemis is his sister. I'm like, oh. He's also like, don't let him know that I told you, but he's actually really into romance novels according to the Artemis Fowl files, which I do own. But apparently he will kill me if I tell you that. So if you don't hear from me again, you know what happened to me. But yeah, Butler's this really cool guy. He's very well-rounded. He's not just this meathead like guy who's only around to throw punches. He's actually like super intelligent. He's the kind of guy who would win the battle but not the war, which is what the Fowls are for. They come up with the plan to win the war. That's a way I can best describe the dynamic between those two. And they actually have a really close relationship. It's stated in the very, very first book, which this movie is based off of, that Butler is the closest thing that Artemis has to a father, and Artemis is the closest thing that Butler has to a friend. No reminder, in the books, Artemis' dad is missing and presumed dead, but that's not in the movie. And like you see, I'm like building this guy up to be really, really awesome. He's often described as a mountain of a man. The first scene he's in the books, like he intimidates this guy just like sitting near him. Like he even breaks the hand of somebody who tries to pickpocket him without even like flinching. Like he just grabs the hand and crushes it. That is how powerful Butler is. You get none of that in the movie. Absolutely none of that. Yeah, we're told he's a martial arts master where he's shown on screen just like twirling around the stick. But actually show us those martial arts skills. He does fight at like 2 points in the movie. but one of them he's aided by Artemis, and the other one feels more like a comedic thing than an actual like knife or death situation. Because at one point a troll gets into the house. In the movie, it's so comedic. Like I'm never actually scared for anybody in that house that this troll is gonna hurt them. But in the book, like Butler almost dies, and Juliet is about to be eaten by this troll. Like there are some serious consequences. Like knives are on the line, but you don't get to see him kick that troll's butt in the movie like you do in the book. I guess spoilers, he kicks the troll's butt, but like it's kind of gruesome reading it, and I'm like, wow, this was a kid's book. But I read this in elementary school and I didn't like freak out, so you can read it too. But you like take away any sense of like fear and anxiety and the sense of danger that the book had. Like if like reading it for the first time, I would like, if I hadn't had knowledge that this was like a series, I would have been like, oh, is Butler gonna die here? And they don't show that. Like, how is he supposed to be a martial arts master? He's like regularly described and shown. Like this is another fight scene that Butler had before all of this that they cut out completely from the movie because they've cut out any of the lead up towards it. So like this was your one part, or you could have really shown him shine his martial arts skills since you decided to make Artemis fight with Butler when he's taking on the team of elves that were at the door. So like why did you make it a comedy? You also don't like get to see any of the other sides of Butler. You don't see him really like the more like technical side of him, his more like analytical side, like him analyzing situations and coming up with the best plan of action in terms of fighting. And because he's really good at coming up with fighting plans. Like show him doing that. Like we had this entire scene in the book, which is the one I was saying that they cut out. Well, like he comes up with a way to beat up a group of men. He's completely outnumbered, but doing it in a way that causes a distraction because he knows how he can beat them on up and like very quietly, very stealthily. And he's like, nah, I gotta come up with a way to make a distraction because he's creating a distraction for Artemis to use. Like you don't get that. Like you're in his head in the book, so you get to see how smart he is coming up with that. Nah, let's just make him this like mindless bodyguard who kind of complains about the cold at one point. You rarely see his soft side. They tried to make his soft side in, well, like he's almost dead from what happened with the troll, but again they made it in a very comical way, so you don't actually feel anything for Butler. You've also haven't grown an attachment to him because he's actually not in it as much as he is in the book. And which is one of the big things that happens when you include his father, is his father's there at the beginning of the movie. And I don't think they actually show Butler, or at the very least he doesn't have his first spoken line until after his father goes missing. So that's a good chunk of the movie where you're not building up the relationship between Artemis and Butler. So I don't feel anything for movie Butler. I don't feel anything for him at all because I haven't had that established relationship shown to me yet. So he's there like nearly dying, and then like he gets like revived by Honey's magic, and then like he's on like, oh, I wasn't crying, right? Which I guess to show him being soft. Like, get out of here! I don't feel anything for these characters. You have no build up there. You made it a comedy of what the troll was doing, and you tried to make it serious by showing him like almost die the very last second. Like that's not gonna do anything. The book did so well with establishing how important Butler is to Artemis and Juliet, and just you really fall in love with this guy. Like damn, like himbos. I'm sorry, I don't care for you anymore. I'm more for a Butler type where he's strong and smart. But no, like, there's nothing out of him that makes me feel that. And you also don't get that scene where he essentially abandons Artemis for a hot second to go check on his sister, which like really shows like, oh, he really cares about his sister, that he's wanting to like leave his principal for a second. Like, bruh, where is that? I also didn't get any indication that he was specifically Artemis II's bodyguard. like the first time speaks is when he's on the phone with somebody telling him that Artemis Fowl the First has just gone missing. It almost feels like he's the general bodyguard for the whole family, which is not the case. Artemis Fowl the First actually had his own butler. He was referred to as the Major, and he was this butler's uncle. And that the Major actually dies when Artemis Fowl the First does his little, like, I'm going to establish shipping routes to Russia. Oops, the mafia blew up my ship in icy cold Russian waters. His is one of the bodies they find wash up. So, like, you wouldn't cheapen any of the relationship between Butler and Artemis, because now he just feels like the family's general bodyguard rather than his specific, like, knife-gnawing bodyguard. This guy has been by his side since birth. Like, they are extremely close. Why would you kill that relationship? Because that's what makes that scene where he almost dies so heart-wrenching. And now for, I guess, the most egregious change. I feel like it should be said that Butler in the book is described as somebody, as Eurasian. He seems to have a lot of Russian and Japanese in him, along with the Irish, obviously, because, you know, this takes place in Ireland. And, yeah, they make him black in the movie, which is not to say, like, oh, diversity bad. No, you made the servants black. At first I thought, like, oh, I'm reading too much into this. But again, I was doing research, and even in the wiki, it's like, it shows that a lot of people are upset with this casting choice, and it falls very much in the scary black man and black servant trope. Because you make this guy who's described as a mountain of a man, who's, like, super scary, that, like, at one point is even referred to as a gorilla, which makes me think that they didn't actually read this book before they did the casting. Because why would you cast somebody who's described as a gorilla at one point? Why would you make that a black man? Why? I just, like, it shows very much that they didn't do as much research into these books as they should have, which really sucks, because there's actually a few, like, one scene that's word for word from the book, so somebody read it. I don't know which is worse. Like, they didn't read it, but they also read it, and they still came out with this, with these casting choices and these, like, changes. I'm getting heated. Yeah, like, I'm not the only one who is upset with the fact that they made the servant, who is very, very scary, a black man. And when asked about this change, apparently the director, what's his name? Kenneth Branagh. I should probably have, like, tried saying this name beforehand, because, you know, speech impediment and all that, but oh well. Apparently he had always envisioned Nonzo Anansi, who worked with him on Disney's live-action Cinderella, and thus cast him as such. I really hate this because, you know, this guy's actually a pretty decent actor. And, like, no, not decent. He's a good actor. He's a good actor. But Disney's Cinderella came out in 2016. This Butler has existed so much longer than that. Like, Butler has existed longer than he has been acting. Because the earliest thing I could find on his IMDb page was from 2006. And, you know, actually, I forgot to write down when these books came out. But as the first movie was supposed to be made in 2001, obviously these books predate 2001. So if you have his earliest thing being from 2006, the first book coming out in 2001, so even if this director saw him all the way in his first work in 2006, this character's had 5 years at the very, very least to be, like, envisioned in people's heads. You will actually have more like 15 years to envision people's head, but whatever. And he envisions this guy like, oh, I worked with him, and, like, I feel like he would fit the role. Like, that's not how you do this. Because he doesn't fit this role now. Like, no offense to the actor, because he's actually pretty damn good. But he's not at all what Butler is. Like, I don't know, maybe if he had been given a better script, he would have acted more Butler-like. But no, he doesn't look like Butler at all. He ends up contradicting so much of what is Butler. Because, like, you have this very long lineage in Ireland. And it feels very, very gross to think that a black family is a servant to a white family for generations, which is why I'm kind of glad that they cut out the entire dynamic between the Fowls and the Butler, because that would have made this even creepier and very gross. And like I said, I'm not the only one who has seen issue in this. Multiple people have found issues with this. And this also happens to play into the fact that they have substituted a minority for another minority. If the point of casting him was diversity, then you failed because you have changed. You can't interchange minorities that way. You are not making your movie more diverse than it would have been if you had just cast these characters as they should have been. Because he is a Eurasian man. Like, bring in a half white, half Japanese man to play this role. And like, come on. This is one of the most terrible changes, just because, the dynamic between the Fowls and the Butlers is something very, very important throughout the entire series. So, I don't see them actually making a movie series out of this, because they've royally screwed up the first one. I don't think I know a single person who actually enjoyed this movie. It's not like, I guess, Percy Jackson, which was a semi-enjoyable movie out of its context of the book. Like, if I hadn't read the books first, I probably would have enjoyed the movie. But reading the books, I don't enjoy the movie. No, like, I showed this movie to a non-book reader, and he hated it. There's so many things wrong with it. Everything done to it, like the changes they made to Butler. Nope, not worth it. You didn't make anybody like this movie. Sorry, bye. Actually, no, not bye yet, because there's one more person to talk about in the Butler category, and that is Juliet, his younger sister. Yeah, like I mentioned before, she was born when Butler was 22, and he has been teaching her how to kick butt since she was 4. She has gone through a lot of the same training as Butler has, as she is another Butler. And you don't really see her kick a lot of butt in the first book. She is renegated more to a side character role here. But since we see Butler kick butt, you can make the assumption that she can also kick as much butt had she been given the opportunity to. She is developed a lot more further into the series, and I actually really like her as a character. I don't want to say too much about how her character develops, but I really like the direction she went in, and there's actually a lot of it is started in this first book. Like, there's so much foreshadowing for what she goes into, and yeah, it's really, really cool what happens with her character. So yeah, go read the books. But she is at the Fowl household because, in the book, it's the father that's missing and the mother who is in this depressive state, and she needs taken care of. So Juliet is there to essentially be a maid, bring food to Angeline, take care of her, clean her room, do whatever she has to do, try to get her to take some medicine. And that's generally what she does. She also kind of has this role of a big sister to Artemis. She refers to him as Artie, which is the same nickname that his mother does, which is one of those, also another moment where you get to see the child side of him. After Artemis goes through with his plan to kidnap a fairy, Honey, and have her imprisoned in the Fowl Manor until they can get the gold, another added task to Juliet is essentially being her warden. She makes sure to keep an eye on her and bring her food whenever she needs it. General stuff like that. So yeah, her character's no side character-ish. She doesn't do too much, but she's still integral to the story. You cannot replace her with a lamp. Like she can be in the movie. Oh boy. Okay. One of the big changes is instead of being Butler's sister, she is his niece. I'm not completely opposed to this change. This is actually the one change that I don't mind, because there are some differences between Juliet and Butler. Juliet was actually born in America, and she's not American, but she's American born because her family has been based in Ireland for all these years. She's also doesn't necessarily look too much like him. She's blonde while he's not, stuff like that. So I would have minded that if they had kept the original character looks, but they didn't, so whatever. And also some people might have a hard time wrapping their head around the fact that these parents had children 22 years apart. It's not unheard of, honestly. I definitely know people who have siblings that are very, very separated in age, But I guess like some people might have not understood that, so they brought her in as a niece instead. What I don't like is that they changed her to be 12 years old, which is why I'm assuming they actually changed her to a niece and stepsister, because it would have been like weird to have this like almost, I think it's like in his late 30s. I want to say at this point Butler is in his mid to late 30s, having a 12-year-old sister. That I think is enough a little bit of a stretch. The point of changing her to 12 is apparently a 12-year-old can wrangle in another 12-year-old. Like, that's literally what they say. It's like, oh, to wrangle in, to like keep track of, to whatever, another 12-year-old, like bring in a 12-year-old, which is what Butler's idea is. But you don't actually see her like doing anything to keep Artemis in check or whatever. You just see her bring him sandwiches. You already took the side character role from her and reduced it even more. There's no point in including her in this movie. How do you reduce a side character to even less? Well, that's how. She's pretty useless. I can't think of one major thing she actually does in this movie. And if there is any little thing she does, this could probably be put onto another character. I guess like that was the justification for bringing in Juliet, since the mother isn't there. So what's the point of having Juliet? You could have just made her the housemaid. But maybe they felt that being like too much, because, you know, having another black character being a maid, maybe they thought that was pushing the line. I don't know. I'm not in the head of the casting director and the script writers, and yeah, I'm not in their head, so I wouldn't know. But I'm assuming that that's what they came up with to have her be included still. When no, especially since you have to have her be in her late teens. I don't think her age is ever actually stated in the first book. She just was described as a teenager. But knowing from what happens in later books, she's probably between the ages of 17 and 19 in this book. And making her 12 just ruins that entire timeline. Like, oh, great, you completely ruined the setup for what her character does in the third book. Yay. You've already ruined every other setup that's happened in this series, but okay. You know what's funny is I'm looking at my notes and I misspelled lamp and put lap. That's how little this character has. Like, she's actually one of the shorter sections I wrote on, because wow, they diminished her role so much in the movie. I don't even know what else I can say about her. Just wow. You also you don't get the feel of her being this like kick butt type girl, because you never see her kick butt except for one like obviously choreographed scene with Butler where they're like showing training with each other. I guess it's so obviously choreographed, and I think that's it. That's it. Like, that's the chore thing, but she's just seen running around and being useless, which I guess is similar to what happened in the book, but there was a reason for it to be useless, because she was kind of under a spell. Yay, they ruined the magic system too, but I'll be going over that in the next episode. There's so much wrong with these two characters. I honestly didn't even feel any like familiar bond between Juliet and Butler in this movie like I do in the books. In the books, he cares about his little sister a lot. Like, if you were to have like his kids or Juliet and Artemis, and you get none of that. He doesn't feel like that kind of guy anymore. And Juliet is just there to hand sandwiches and fruit to people. I'm not gonna scream. I'm not gonna scream. There'll be people in the house. Maybe I'll grab a pillow and scream into it later. But yeah, that is the Butlers. The movie screwed them over. These might as well be two separate characters, and according to the wiki, they are. I still find that hilarious. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about these characters. Hopefully I touched upon why these are just terrible adaptations. In the next episode, I think I'm just going to go over the fairy magic system that they royally screwed over, and the fairies themselves. And I think I'm actually going to make this a four-parter, because that's probably going to take me an hour to talk about if I also include the villains. So maybe make a fourth episode for the villains, because wow, there's so many things wrong. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Be safe, wear a mask, stay healthy. Bye-bye.